actually live on Facebook for the season 5 B2B Community Builder Show. I'm your host and Chief Executive Connector, Pablo Gonzalez. Today we have on the show a guy that is impossible not to like. I don't know how you came on my radar. I think we were interacting with Chris Walker's content, and the more that I looked into you, the more I liked you. And at some point, I don't know how the friendship forged, but it's absolutely like an internet friendship. And then as we started really connecting, we realized we're kind of the same dude out here. We're doing the same things. We're doing the same motions. You're in e-commerce in Denmark. I'm in Florida, doing B2B marketing, and it all really, really worked out. I just greatly, greatly respect your outlook and what you've done. You are the founder of Evolve, which is completely modernizing marketing in e-commerce these days. Carlos, coming from our first guest coming from Sao Paulo, Brazil, Carlos Monteiro, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. I love the accent, by the way. It's perfect. So.
Dude, good. I'm glad you validated. My wife says that I don't do it well.
No, you do it, and it's funny because in Denmark, like they can't really pronounce my name, so it's Carlos. Hey, Carlos, and I'm like, I got used to it, So it's Carlos. It's very good.
Yeah. Carlos, I got it, man. I think it's Carlos, when I try to speak Brazilian Portuguese, and my wife's like, "You just sound terrible." All right.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Carlos, let's start at the end, man. You were just telling me you just pulled off like a 80+ person event that's been kind of like the crescendo of your career, and you moved to Denmark how long ago?
It was 9 years ago, about nine years ago.
All right, tell me about the event that you just pulled off, and then we'll go back to the beginning of how you were able to build this thing up. So you said you have a playbook now of how you did this thing. Tell me about it, man.
So first off, thanks very much for having me. Well, this event, basically the idea was born because I had a conversation with a company. It's actually the guy who gave me one of the first opportunities that as a gig in Denmark. And he works for a logistics company. They're massive, it's called DSV Logistics. And we were having this lunch, and he was saying, all my customers, they talk about innovation and e-commerce, and he's senior, he's older, he's in his 60s. And I said, his name is Henrik, how about we do an event like small risk, big return, where we're gonna, I'm gonna connect you with other players in the commerce scene, because I've been now in global commerce for about 8-9 years. And I actually got to know a lot of people globally, and we'll talk about that. And he said, but how do you see that, playing out? I said, well, it's going to be an online event. We're going to promote a lot this event, like online. But the idea here is not to generate leads or even the demand per se. It's just to connect you with other companies. That's the main goal of this event. So he said, okay, fine, I'll sponsor this. And then I started, so I first sold this idea to Henrik, and then I started like inviting other companies to do this event. And then some companies, they said, well, I can come in with, some money. Some companies like Implement Consulting Group, they couldn't sponsor, but they offered me their like studio. And it's a studio that they charge $2,000 per day, so it was not bad at all. And I had a professional setup to do the event there, plus their social media team to help me promote the whole thing. And then we pulled it off. Like we promoted the event for about 2 weeks. It was fully online, live, like you're doing. But of course, we had like a nice setup, like a studio and a bunch of speakers. And then we managed to have 86 people who actually signed up for the event. We did it live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and on the website also, where our website is hosted. And it was great. It was great because I think from a networking standpoint, Henrik was very impressed and satisfied. We managed to, Henrik, the guy from DSV, to connect him with other, leaders there in the industry. So that was a win, I would say. And also from the feedback that we got from just the community and people that I never heard of, and people who were like, oh, this is really cool what you're doing. and that's it. So we did this event, as I was sharing, 86 signups, about 1,400 minutes of content watched. I gotta get the data on LinkedIn at some point, but I can share that with, maybe take a screenshot and show you. But really cool, because I think I was saying, like, the sponsors, they were a bit skeptical about sponsors and supporters, like about the whole event and how we were going to promote this. So we didn't pay for any ads, like we didn't sponsor anything. It was basically organic reach that we had, but we put everybody in a LinkedIn group and had everyone like liking each other's content, resharing, commenting, the drill, like on LinkedIn, right? And that works really well, because I think it's all about using the influence of other people to bring, attendees for your event. And I mean, that was really interesting. Like, we had this company called Tacton. They have this technology called CPQ. Don't want to get very technical, but everyone working in this company, like, I think it's probably a bigger company investing in them. So they have former heads of manufacturing, in the manufacturing industry. Like that, there was a guy who was a former head of Tetra Pak, which is like this packaging company. When he shared a post, and he was very reluctant to share some of the content, like, we had former heads of signing up to the event, and because he shared the post. So it's all about who's actually sharing your content and driving attention. Because if I go there, and we spoke about this, like trying to enter the US and all of that, you need to have people with authority in that market who are going to invite people to whatever it is. And so people, because they have the trust, right? They have trust already. So
yeah.
people buy into trust, and they
Yeah, man.
So that was the event. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Right. Because to me, this is like we're gonna dive back and break down how you got here. Right. But for someone that moves from South America to a Nordic country, and in 9 years becomes the guy that is pulling off his own event, being seen as how to do this, has been a very deliberate process for you, right? And we tease this show as how to use content-led community to break into other markets. And some of the stuff that you just broke down, which I think we're going to go back to the origin now and see how you learned these lessons and got to it, is the idea that you have figured out how to become guilty by association with people of a certain character, right? Like if you can, you just described it, if you get a certain leader's buy-in, and you're creating content with that leader, and they're the ones sharing that content, that's a validation that then gets seen by their network. You described the idea that if you can get a whole bunch of people to co-create stuff with you, now they have a personal stake in promoting it and whatnot. And then pairing that with LinkedIn's algorithm that shows things to your network creates this great organic reach and creates great exposure for everybody, right? So it's a win-win for everyone. And that whole deployment of doing that works, whether it's a weekly internet talk show, whether it's a virtual summit like you just did, whether it's an in-person event, if you can gather those things, and it works across a bunch of different ways. So I want to go back to this idea that you moved from Brazil to Denmark, not really knowing a lot of people. And you were just telling me, like, you didn't have a career going there. Like, you didn't move there with a company. You had to start over. I would like to just position this call as, you can use this type of thinking and this type of deployment to essentially do anything, right? Like if you were able to, so for you first, it was about getting a job and getting kind of like settled in over there. Can you talk to me about how you got started when you first moved to Denmark and how you uncovered the clues?
Yeah. I think you can use this approach, and I think virtually anything, because it all comes down to relationships. And I started saying, it's not about building a network, in my opinion, it's about having depth in everything you do. And I think, for example, you're a great host, like, most people who are here, like you call them by their name. So it's amazing. So once you get that and you build that level of relationship, I think once you have depth with people, and that's, I think, one of the greatest learnings that I have in my career so far. Like, you got the world, man, because people then you don't need to be great. I mean, of course, I'm not preaching that you should be mediocre or average. You should try to improve and be better, but people will help you, So going back, like, if we take a step back and look at
Carlos, let me pause you real quick. I love that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this depth thing. I was on Twitter earlier, and I think it was, I forgot the guy's name, but he's the guy that wrote the book Category Creation, Anthony Canada. And he wrote something on Twitter saying, before you have a community-led anything, you need to have an audience. And I pushed back hard at that, right? Like, I believe what you believe. I believe that if you have depth with 10 people, you have a community that can completely accelerate growth.
Absolutely.
And so tell me your thoughts on that.
I think, again, it goes back to relationships. And I like there's this guy in the US. I'm not sure if you heard of him, but his name is Ron Thurston. He is an e-commerce influencer. And I mean, our relationship started off like this. Like, I found that he was a former Bonobos guy. He built Bonobos and Gap and Intermix. He was the head of expansion. And then and then he was about to leave his job. So he started a book called Retail in America. Great guy, Amazon best-selling author. And so we started this relationship where I was just like, liking his content, commenting on. And then I got him into the show of our client called E-commerce Growth Show. And because of Ron now, he just referred me to another technology company where he's an investor. I didn't know. And I'm helping the guy with the same playbook, like to build his personal brand, if you like, and then eventually do live events because they have this technology. So again, that was a year and a half ago, but all of that, it's a relationship, right? You don't marry a person in like a day. So you date, right? And then and then you build some trust, and then you like each other, and then you go out for dinner and that kind of stuff, and then and then we're here, and that's it. And then, like, one person, that's what I believe, they can change your life, because Ron is so connected and he has a level of influence, of connectivity that I wouldn't have, right? So, but it's not that I see him, I have deep respect and I really want to know Ron. I that's it, I really want to help him. I'm genuine about it, like, I'm not there for the short sale. I'm helping, I'm making introductions, whatever, and things come back. But that's the level of depth that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I like that. I think people that are extremely relationship oriented understand that the right singular relationship can lead to a whole ton of relationships, right? Like, as a business person, I see it almost as like distribution, right? Like, it's like, do you want to sell direct to consumer, or do you want to sell to distributors? And if you think about your relationships as like, you have some relationships that are direct to consumer, others are to distributors, and those distributors can get you in 1,000 doors, then it makes a lot of sense, this idea that if you were trying to build a community, there is some value. There's definitely value to having a large audience and doing this thing like one-to-one. But yeah, it's this idea that, having a large audience is great, and you're going to have a level of conversion from a certain audience. But if you have the right, we prove that if you have the right 30 people in a room, it can lead to $40 million worth of profit for one of our clients, kind of thing, right? So the thought of, we think a lot in business of like one-to-one and one-to-many and one-to-few, if you think of the ABM thing, but people don't really apply that to, they haven't made yet the connection to relationships and how you can treat relationships as a one-to-many or one-to-few distribution system, as long as you are pursuing that thing that you're saying, this idea of like genuinely being interested in them, genuinely being in it for them. That is the thing that then leads to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So, all right. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. And I think, for example, I decided to focus on e-commerce, and I'm not an e-commerce specialist. I know people, and I've been in the field for some years now, so I know the jargons and how people talk, the lingo. So like, for example, you probably understand a lot about investments now, but I'm not I'm not the founder of an e-commerce platform myself. So I don't know all the technicalities, but I do understand the lingo and things as such. So I decided, I think my challenge today is to make people, I can't make anything, but to have people realize that relationships, they change everything. And so I'm coming to the realization that if you don't have the founder of a company, and I work with SaaS businesses mostly, if you don't have the founder invested in the project, then it's like a no-go. And for example, for me to sell my services, I realized that starting off with like the event, like the thing, it's a good thing, because then they see that, well, there's people, they have this opportunity to network with other founders and VPs and whatnot. That's one way to go about it, but also to offer like the founder brand sort of service. So where I help, and we are doing free trials as well, so they can see like a taster that it works, so I have this guy, Patrick from Immerse. Now he's just done his first video today. And then we recorded a bunch of videos with headline and his views on the future of commerce and blah, blah, blah. And then he will see that, it's going to work. Also because Ron is there. So I already have a roadmap for him to use, maybe for the lack of a better word, to use Ron's influence. But Ron the guy, the Amazon bestselling author, he's an investor in his business, to have Ron helping him accelerate relationships and eventually doing live shows and all of that, to talk about whatever it is, to talk about the future of commerce. Because as we spoke last time, I think people don't really care about your technology, to be honest. Like there's over 10,000, MarTech solutions today. So if you don't stand out, right? If you don't have a point of view, if you don't invest in relationships, I think you're just going to be another company out there. And yeah, that's my views on it. But sorry, we should
listen,
right?
I agree. Yeah. So let's go to that point where you were a founder, right? Like you weren't even a founder yet, right? Like you were just a dude that moved over there and you had to find a way in. You told me that you starting a blog was kind of like what got you in the door. Tell me about those days when you first moved to Denmark and you were just trying to blaze a path. How'd you get to content?
Yeah, the content came off necessity, because I was moving to Denmark. In Brazil, you have a network. It's like you in Florida and the US, people, right? And then you have to go to the Nordics. I was like, Jesus, I'm screwed. I mean, what am I gonna do here? And I just knew my ex-wife's, family and her, and I had a kid, and we had to live in my ex-in-laws place for about 8 months. So I started this blog called Denmark Brazil. I remember I got drunk one day arriving from university, and I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I created this blog, and it came. I saw this website, I think from the UK, where they were talking about careers. So they would interview, someone, and that person would talk about a career in finance. And I said, well, maybe my blog, I could do something like that, to talk about the business environment in Brazil. And I'm going to interview my friends. And I had a bunch of friends who were, at the C-level in different sectors in Brazil. So that was how I started. So I had a terrible camera. I would visit my friends, and I said, hey, dude, you got to help me out here, because I don't know what I'm going to do in Denmark. And so that's how basically I started. And I arrived in Denmark. I was looking for a job, sent over 300 job applications. All of them were denied. And then I was telling you just before this call, people were saying, oh, you don't have a Danish education, all of that. And then I realized that, well, maybe if I approach the same people that I'm sending emails, and they're saying, no, like, we don't have a job position here for you, blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot to that as well. I can talk about it, because I was approaching people saying that I could help them to enter Brazil. The reason why I'm in Denmark is because I married a Danish woman. I worked for the Danish government, as an intern there. So my job at the Danish government, at the Danish Trade Council, as they call it, was to help Danish companies enter Brazil. So prior to moving to Denmark, I thought that my only, let's say, my skill was to help companies enter Brazil. So that was it. I didn't know much more. And so, yeah, I created that blog. I was sending all these emails. People were saying that they didn't have a job position for me. Then I realized that maybe I should, I had this moment where I said, maybe I should add all of these decision makers on LinkedIn. But instead of saying, hey, I tried to, I send you an email and I asked for a job and there was nothing, maybe I should just approach them and say, hey, my name is Carlos. I create content about Brazil for the Danish community. This is the blog, and I would love if you could give me your honest feedback on the content that I create there. And doing that, and my network was very small when I got to Denmark. I think one of the lessons also that I had from that time, LinkedIn was another beast in 2013 compared to what it is today, but still very relevant. So I realized, well, personalizing your message is really important. Again, going deep instead of just blasting people, with random messages or just saying, hey, I'd like to connect, and you don't even show any interest. But and giving people a reason to connect and talking about something that is not related necessarily to you. So it's not about my interest. It's about the blog, and I think this blog could potentially help you, right? So that's how I started, and I was doing that for about 4 months, and that's when I heard from a company in Copenhagen. The founder of the company said, "Hey, Carlos, we have someone who sits on our board. He's the founder of really large company in Scandinavia, and he referred you. He said your content is good, and it seems you know something about Brazil. So we like to talk to you because we are entering the Brazilian market." And that's how my company started back in, actually, I sent the first invoice in January of 2014. And I did that for several years. And then, of course, things evolved. You can ask questions and then
Yeah. I got you, man.
Just keep going.
No, I know. I love it. I appreciate the pause. What I find significant about the story, the stuff that I want to tease out as lessons is, one, you don't need to be an expert in something in order to make content about something. You just need to be able to talk to people that are in that ecosystem. And I feel like you did a very good job of being like, well, what makes me different than the rest of the country, the rest of the people here? And you're like, I have a tie to Brazil. How can I leverage that? And you started making content around that. And then the other, I think, kind of key moment for you there was going from this idea of making audience in content, right? Just making content, hoping that your audience gets to it, to making relationship out kind of maneuvers, right? This idea that you were making content for a specific type of person and then reaching out to that person and saying, hey, what do you think about this stuff? Getting feedback directly from the people that you're trying to connect with through the content seems like it accelerated, whatever you were trying to accomplish there. Were you getting feedback from these folks that you were reaching out to on LinkedIn? Did it affect the direction of the content that you were making? Did it become like a feedback loop for you?
Yeah, 100%. I remember getting all sorts of feedback, but people in Denmark, it's quite interesting. They're very honest, and they're really, really nice people, to be honest. And so they were like, hey, I love your content. How about, do you know anything about this sector in Brazil? Do you know anything about such and such? The thing is, what I learned there was that my content was very wide. So it was very difficult to have a focus. So I was talking about lamps. And there's no problem when you do that. But I think it's better when you specialize, and again, if you go deep in a niche, because I think you can always, as the Play Bigger author says, you can niche down and then you can grow wide afterwards. I think it's a lot easier if you find, a way to have a point of view, if you can have a clear point of view and differentiation there, niche down, and then you can always, I think, expand afterwards. When I started, I was talking about sometimes education, but I would get feedback. I try to be at the surface level. So with my content, like about Brazil, but that worked. And that's how I got started.
Cool. So you get this job, right? Like, so this investor gets a whiff of your content, sends it to someone to give you a job. How did, what was kind of the next iteration of that? Did they hire you to write blogs? Did they hire you for a specific position? What was your next kind of like step up in that journey?
It was, I helped them with business development. And then I said, well, I don't think I'm going to go for a job anymore. I'll have this company. So I started a company. I was a contractor, but then I had other clients, and I was offering business development service on demand for companies that wanted to enter Brazil. And of course, I mean, I did this for this company, and then I was looking for other things because the pay wasn't great, but it was my first contract. And so I managed to also to bring some beer. I found some beers, great beers, like craft breweries from Denmark. They wanted to expand. And then I said, hey, I can help you in Brazil. And the thing was the same. I mean, in the beer business, I found out that, so again, if we talk about communities and how do you develop business or how do you do business development, I found that Facebook was great because there were linked Facebook groups that I could find, and then I created the story about the Danish craft. I created like a Facebook group, and I remember saying, hey, there's going to be a Danish invasion of craft breweries here, and we're looking for buyers, and then I found some buyers, and there was a lot of creativity and storytelling in that process. So I did beers. I helped some breweries enter the Brazilian market. I could make some really good money there, and with commission, sinto falta. Someone wrote here.
That's Dawn. She's our globe traveler that hangs out here.
Nice. And then at some point I was hired by a company, again, from Denmark. They had this technology, and that's how I really started in e-commerce. Like they had this, because when you say you have a fashion business, you need to optimize your pictures. Yeah. So you need, white background, you need the picture to spin on a website. And they had a technology that did all of that. They said, Carlos, we are having some pretty big leads coming from Brazil. Would you like to help us? I'd like to develop the market in Brazil. We need to, to talk to fashion companies. And so I did that for some time. We opened an entity in Brazil as well. And then they said, well, you did really well. How about you try and do the same in the UK for us? I said, well, I love the challenge, but I don't have a network in the UK. And that's when I realized that I had a method, so again, started using the same process about content, about those learnings that I had from my blog. I would go to the UK. I would do interviews first with decision makers there, and fashion companies and companies that were in their target, would talk to people, talk about whatever it was, like fashion and commerce, and then I would build relationships. People would feel good, and then I could talk about Pixels, which was the company. And then I realized that, well, maybe we have, I was trying to figure a business model, right? Like maybe we have here, we're going to be a sales acceleration company with a content first methodology, right? So we did a lot, but that I realized that I had a method, like more like a playbook, so to speak, when I had this opportunity to develop the British market. I mean, we opened like really, really large accounts. I even wrote an article at that time that went viral on HubSpot, how I landed 11 meetings with the largest, biggest e-commerce companies in the world. And then I tell about the cadence and the motion that we were using there. So John Lewis, Ted Baker, some big brands. Yeah.
Nice, man. So, all right. So then if I'm reverse engineering, at first you were just getting scrappy with figuring out what your resources were, right? You realized I have a network in Brazil that's attractive to Danish companies. I'm going to start leveraging my network in Brazil to make content that can then provide this like social validation. You got a big client out of that social validation. Then you got your next client after that once you had success with them, they wanted to expand you beyond what your initial resources were And then that's what opened up your eyes to like, okay, it's not just about my resources and my skill set. I have a methodology here that I've been able to apply more than once, and I believe in it. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it draws me to your story, right? Like that's totally parallel to my, my journey of starting these like young professional groups because I fell into it, leveraging the young professional groups to become a business developer, to then get into like the tech world and start doing the same exact thing, but on Zoom calls, to then creating a methodology and, a playbook around it, the way that you describe it. So if we were to fast forward now, based on that playbook, how similar is your playbook today to that playbook? Like can you describe the playbook overall if you were to say entering, right? Like I'm starting from scratch, I'm entering somewhere, take us from like A to Z.
Sure. So I think it's a work in progress, and to share that, I'll share a little bit. I'll still share a bit of my personal journey.
Please.
How long do we have, Pablo, here?
We got another 25 minutes, buddy.
All right. So yeah, fasting forward, things really, really, really changed when it was 2017. The founder of this e-commerce platform from Brazil, he said, he saw an article I wrote on LinkedIn, and he said, Carlos, I don't know if anyone is in e-commerce. They're growing quite a lot in the US. You can check them out. They just did an IPO. They're called vtex.com. So the founder of this company said, Carlos, I just checked something you saw on LinkedIn. I'm living in the UK. We're going for our international expansion. If you're ever here, come around. Let's have a beer. Let's eat some, steaks. Brazilians love steaks, and let's do it. So I went to his place, and then he started like grilling me about e-commerce. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm not an e-commerce expert, but I'm a people expert, and I can help you enter new markets. So he said, okay, what do you think? Should I start, in the UK, France, Germany? I said, no, I think you're toast if you enter these markets because the competition is really fierce. I think we should we should go for the emerging markets, right? And then we did the same. We entered Romania, lots of content, went to a trade show, talked to all the sponsors at the trade show, because again, when you're looking at international expansion, you have to remember that there is a pre-existent ecosystem in that country. You visit the country, people are connected already. It doesn't matter whether they are, vendors or they are your ideal client, they are connected. People know people, right? They know each other. So you visit the country, do content, get your face out there, talk to people, introduce yourself, start doing some content on LinkedIn, start those relationships, and then you start creating your events with local vendors, because local vendors, they have the same interest that you have. They want to expand internationally as well. And then you can start creating events using some theme, right? And again, that's it. That's how we did with vtex. After vtex in 2018, he was quite impressed with what was happening in Romania. He made us a 7-digit offer to acquire my business. Basically, I would have to become an employee at his company, and I wasn't that comfortable with that or how they operated. They're great people, but I just didn't feel it was right, like in my stomach. So I didn't join the company. And yeah, it was kind of like going a bit downhill. Like I told you, right? Like I had my personal COVID in 2019, so I got divorced, quit the business I founded, and decided to go to visit Brazil for like 45 days, where I had to, I wanted to do some soul searching exercise, because until that point, I didn't realize that connecting people was actually a major skill. And there's massive value in this, because you're actually facilitating stuff. And for me, it was like, okay, where I'm really good at connecting people and building that trust. I'm not a closer. I'm not, but I connect people, and that's a skill. And then maybe I can create events, and I can do all of those things that I was talking about in terms of personal brand, help you elevate your brand, on social media, whatever medium you decide to go with. So I had this really hard moment, but very important as well. I would say it was a major lesson for me, and decided to go back to Denmark and start Evolve. And Evolve started basically I didn't know what I was going to do. Like I had a job for a brief period, like about 3-4 months. I didn't adapt to the company, decided to quit the company, and then the pandemic hit the world. And I was like, great, what I'm going to do now? So I start doing lives. I have this clarity, I guess, and say, okay, maybe my network is really good in e-commerce. How about going live? Because everybody was doing live, so it was better to do something productive, right? Started doing some live sessions on Zoom with e-commerce people, like connecting like a guy from Poland, just creating thematic events online. And then this company from Turkey, they approached me to like co-host their podcast called the E-commerce Growth Show. And yeah, the e-commerce growth show, now it's quite a cool show. We have about 9,000 downloads a month. It's a global thing, like it's by Segmentify. It's the name of the client. It's a personalization company. And I was trying to connect the dots. I said, okay, maybe I can help companies to create a podcast. I can do that. Can do live events. Can offer like this founder brand services. And it was really hard for me to put this into like a box and say, what are the offerings here? Yeah. And I'm still working on this, to be honest. I was actually working on my presentation today because I think the event, and as I said, in terms of acquiring clients, I think it's a great way to have a good relationship with potential clients or clients and sell more, keep selling my other offerings. So I would say that my playbook, if there's any, it starts with a founder brand service where I help you. Evolve can help you, establish a stronger personal brand. The process is simple. Like I do a video interview, right? With, for example, take you, Pablo, and talk about community building. What's community building? So we go about that. And we have different, let's say, layers of content. We try to talk about your culture. We do video interviews, talk about your company culture. We talk about common questions that your clients they have. We talk about your views, so thought leadership, and try really to help you differentiate from the pack. And it's like, what is, so for example, Patrick, what is live commerce? How do you see the industry going? Why is this important today? And all of that. So we have some questions that I'm doing the interviews, but that we ask, and common questions that your customers have. And so we use video really to scale your sales process and to build that trust, right, with your audience, and really expand your presence on, in that case, LinkedIn.
Got it. So you take strategic question asking in order to basically establish unique value propositions, point of view of the founder, and different points of the customer journey to let them know that you understand them, kind of thing, right?
Correct. But that also, we can also expand that to the rest of the team. So for example, now we can turn your team also business influencers, if you like, because I believe the future of B2B sales is like about having your team like becoming, for the lack of a better word, business influencers. So everybody needs to have a voice, right? Starting from the leadership. So help you, the founder, and now your team. And then from that, we can do live events, or we can have a podcast where your team is interviewing your clients, or you can have like Chris Walker is doing with his team. So, and then, for example, live events where, let's say, if you want to enter Canada, or if you want to enter Romania, like, who do I talk there? And then we can also help you do that. And how I'm going about this, it's like I have very strategic people, and this is a bet that I have, but I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. But that, for example, Scott Emmons was the guy who created the Neiman Marcus lab. He was there for 17 years. Neiman Marcus is pretty big there, right?
As a definitely. Yeah.
So he was the techie, So these guys, they are like my ambassadors, the Evolve ambassadors. So I'm kind of helping them with content, and I'm creating this like layer of ambassadors so they can help me, but this in multiple countries. And so, that's the idea. Because then if a tech company approaches me and say, hey, I'd like to enter Romania. Well, I already have this relationships in Romania or Poland, or, and then you have an ecosystem like software houses. You have the influencers, business influencers or pundits, or does it make sense?
Yeah, man. If I can recap it, right? So it's what I find fascinating about this story, man, is how you and me have evolved to essentially have the same exact offering for two different kind of like things, right? But also got there the same way, right? Like I would start with the show in mind, right? The live event, as you and Chris Walker call it. I don't know if I'm like too much of a Gen Xer to consider this a live event. I still have a hard time calling it that, which is why I call it an internet talk show. But I always started with a live event, but then realized that in order to get someone to the live event, you got to provide quicker wins first, right? And the validation of the video first, right? So I went from like, hey man, we're going to launch a show for you and it's going to take about 2 months to figure it out. And then we're going to do it. And then it takes a couple months to like gain ground, to exactly what you do. I don't call it the founder brand package. I call it the client activation package, where we interview the founder and the leadership team about their core values, their unique value propositions, and every step in the customer journey from a standpoint of like, what is somebody feeling when they're figuring out whether or not this pain has a solution, and what advice do you have to give them? What are they feeling when they realize that the solution is somebody like you, and what advice do you have to give them? What do you like, all the way to like evaluating providers, to working with providers, to post success, and anything else, any other advice. And then we create that in all of their sales enablement stuff and social media pieces, because it creates all these great like compilation videos that adds credibility and adds, good like marketing collateral. And then we go from there to the show strategy, the live event strategy, which then becomes the flywheel piece where they're leveraging people from the networks. The thing that I'm missing is something that's really smart that you said, which is you think about it in countries. I've got to think about it in different verticals, right? Like my thing works really well for wealth creation companies. It works really well for high core values driven, companies that have invested in culture. And Jerry McNamara, who was just on, he's my Ron, right? Like, so I produce a show for him that allows me to build a network in that world of like best places to work CEOs. And that allows that in. And then I got to find another one. I guess JWB would be, I got to start thinking about it more tactically. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing, right? It's establish the credibility, differentiating somebody through content and understanding of their client, and then establishing credibility by having a recurring live event where you're able to then build out your ecosystem, like you just called it. I find it fascinating, man.
Thank you. And yeah, I think I have, we spoke about it. We think alike, and it's crazy because I think it's like, to do a live event is great, but then people come and say, I don't have time. Or what really happens is like fear gets into the way. That's, so if you start with this quick wins that you said, like the videos, I wouldn't say easy, but easier than going for the live event. Because people are, like, okay, it's more comfortable. They feel they have control, right? Like here, we have 15 people, asking questions, and then you're just like, but you get used to it, right? But so, yeah, I think the videos are really important. And in your case, maybe, I don't know, just brainstorming if we can.
Yeah, I love it.
I would go for like, because for example, JWB, like they're an investment company, right? Real estate. Maybe I would try to see like what are maybe the ancillary services that JWB sells, so you can create that ecosystem. So is it insurance companies that you could approach, via content, and then I don't know. But it's all in the finance. But I get it. I think it's all in the finance vertical, right? And then
I call it wealth creation, right? Because I think the whole people love to talk about money, right? Like there's things that people love to talk about, right? So like money is definitely one of them. So if you are a Bitcoin company, then people are going to always want to like gather and be like, what's the latest thing with my money here? Same thing with the real estate, same thing with kind of like people that are in like fractionalization of investments and things of that sort, right? So I've been pursuing that vertical while also pursuing that like best places to work kind of vertical. We got a couple questions from Deb, man. You want to go into some Q&A?
Sure.
All right. So Deb Shell's asking, have you found the kind of content that most resonates with an audience? Is that even the right question to ask, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, that resonates. I don't know. I don't know what you mean by resonates, like, because I think content again, and I did a course really worthwhile doing, like by Justin Welsh. I think you know him.
Yeah.
So he's got a great course on LinkedIn, and he simplifies the whole thing. Yeah, work well, that people value. I think, yeah, thank you. So content about your journey, but you have to be intentional about what it's about content. So again, about the course, he breaks down how to create content effectively. He talks about finding content topics that you can talk about and staying on that lane, right? So once I changed that, like I talk about international expansion and I talk about relationship marketing, if you like, in international markets, and I stay on that lane. So I think it's about finding 1,000 ways of speaking about the same 2 things or 3 things, instead of talking about a lot of stuff and talking about nothing, because then people don't remember, right? So what resonates, I think, first I would say have some content topics that you can talk about, well-defined, and then just try different stuff, like connect your personal journey to your content topic. That's one thing people, I think, like to hear. Journeys, right? Like your life, your journey as whatever, what your life lessons kind of thing. Those things are I think valuable, like people always enjoy. And yeah, I try to talk about my craft, my how I see the world, and then I test. So I'm using Shield. Do you know Shield?
Yeah, the LinkedIn app, the LinkedIn plugin.
Yeah, it's actually from Denmark.
Let's go.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool because you can always see what people are kind of like engaging more, so if you don't know Shield, have a look. It's not really expensive. I think it's $7 a month. And what resonates more, what people, what works less. I think when it gets too technical, you're going to reach maybe your real, like, thank you, like your real buyers. Like it's going to resonate more with your ideal buyers, right? I think it's important to test. I don't know if I answered your questions. What ways do you? Yeah.
I think you said it well, man. So like the idea. So this is Deb's been in our boot camp, right? Like we teach a very similar top. You're the first person that's ever. I never took Welsh's course. I never heard anybody call it lanes outside of us before, right? Content lanes, right? It's this idea of just like what are the things we think about it in the sense of, what are the 3 to 5 things that are really, really important to the person that you are trying to serve? And only one of those things can be you, right?
Yeah.
So how can you talk about, so like JWB that sells rental properties in Jacksonville, Florida, people investing with them care about real estate education. They care about alternative asset classes, right? So it's like real estate and all the different things in real estate. Then it's like Bitcoin and bonds and stocks and gold and, like whatever else you can compare, where else I would put my money. We talk about Jacksonville as a macro economy, because if you're going to own a property here for 30 years, you got to like believe it's better than owning it in Naples, Florida, or in Montgomery, Alabama. And then we talk about in-house skill set. That's them, right? So they're how to do property management correctly, how to like succeed at rental properties, how to pick the right neighborhood, all these different things that go into what they do. And then we also have, I don't know if it's a lane, but it's kind of like a filler. It's like, who else does this stuff, right? So like we like to bring on people that are, allow you to source that context of like, oh, okay, well, if, Lee, who is about to be a retired senior IT guy, is doing this and having great success, and I'm a, close to retirement senior IT guy, maybe it works for me too. And oh, by the way, Lee can also talk a lot about real estate and exactly how to do it and how to lend money and this and that, right? So we try to like maneuver between these lanes and use people that are like the ICP to talk about that expertise in order to keep it going, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how we do it. So Deb also has, what ways do you find to scale content creation and make it easier to get done? I'd love to hear your advice on this.
Yeah, I think I realize you need people, like some kind of social media agency, and that's what I'm doing with my Instagram, because I have another thing, like another project there, for Brazilians abroad. You will need, freelancers, and otherwise it's just too time consuming. Again, I think video like Pablo is doing here is great, because you can always extract the audio. You can always use the script to, for example, to do the transcription of everything that happened in the session, and that probably is good for SEO reasons as well. So I would go with video, and then have someone who's going to, one or more, right, to help you break down the content and kind of repurpose everything and create different pieces and bits of content. So yeah, I think that's the way to go about it, until technology catches up and something happens there.
Carlos,
right?
do you use Descript at all, man? Have you used Descript?
After you suggested, I think then I've been trying. It's super interesting, But my guys in Brazil, they're still not really familiar with it. They're using Adobe or something, so that's the thing, right? So yeah.
The average freelancer that you're going to hire isn't using it, but it creates so our team, what we did, we built the whole process around the script, and then our creative genius, JP, he finalizes it with what he can do on Adobe, right? So it's, we basically broke it out into like a 5-step process, which is the creation of the content, the transcription, the editing, the caption writing and headline writing, and the distribution, right? So what we do is get it transcribed. From the transcription, you can highlight the parts that you like the most, or whoever is doing that can highlight, or you can quality control for those parts, instead of thinking like I got to go to like minute 34, second 3 to whatever, it just takes away time from that. Once that's identified, then it goes to the creative person to edit it out. Once that's done, then it goes into this like batchboard document where we have a list with the file, the space for a headline, space for the caption copy, and space for a call to action. Then the editor goes back and puts in the headlines, puts in whatever teaser you wanted to put in. Then it comes back and it's ready for publishing. And now the publishing person is able to take the captions and everything and distribute, right? So that way, whether you're one person that has one person, thanks ET, good to have you, man. Whether it's one person that does it all, you can still start filling people in, right? So like at first it was just me and JP, and he was doing all the editing, I was doing everything else. Then we brought in a social media manager. Then we brought in a writer. Now we brought in a content strategist. So now like different people are doing different parts of the process and can scale out. And the script happens to be able to do almost all that stuff at once with the added Adobe. So that's just our process. Yeah.
Really nice. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. What is, people just listen to you. Obviously you are full of value and people want to connect with you, man. What's the best way to connect with you? What's the best kind of thing that you want to promote? This is your time to sell something.
No, man, just LinkedIn, Carlos Monteiro, Denmark. I think I'm the only one to pop there. So thank you, Pablo. It's just hit me up on LinkedIn, and let's have a chat. Sure thing.
Awesome, man. Carlos, I just got to say, man, I really appreciate you, dude. Right. Like, I think our relationship, like we were two kind of like lurkers of each other, and we would see each other's content. And at one point I put this like video about, I'm having a hard time with my business. This is how I'm thinking about it. And it ended up being a positive video, but you really jumped in there with some like really great advice and some support for me in a moment where I was like, man, I just needed some validation from someone who's doing it and having success with it. So I just want to say that I really, really appreciated that moment. And that's what's led to this. And I think that more people that think like you in the business ecosystem, in LinkedIn, in e-commerce, doing whatever they're doing, right? Like your belief in relationships and going deep with people I think affects more people than you know, right? So I just want to validate that for you. I think that you're like a bright light in this like LinkedIn ecosystem and a great internet friend to me, man. So I just really appreciate you doing this, and I'm pumped that we get to be friends, man.
Oh, likewise, and thank you for this. To be honest, really great to be here and to be sharing a bit of my journey. Got to do the same with you. So, yeah, man, I think that I have, like, when I talk to someone and I hear competition, I hate that, because I think the bigger the pie, the better it is for everyone, like the more we talk about community, people understand it, like we talk, because it is a challenge. I think we're creating a category. People are just, community has always existed, of course, but I think more and more people are just coming to the realization that this is important, right? So I think we need to support each other, and yeah, pleased to be here. So thanks.